Hey everybody, welcome back to another SUPboarder video. This video is going to be talking all about the JP Australia foil range. So you could use these for wing foiling, surf foiling, or if you even want to do a little bit of windsurf foiling as well. So JP Australia have been involved in the foiling industry since the start, and they very much had the JP foil board, which is still in their range. One of the first foil boards we actually used was a 6.8 by 26 JP foil. As I said, that's still in the range now, and it still is a great board, and we had that board for years and years and years. It was great for us getting into SUP surf foiling and getting into wing foiling as well. But now these new boards, so there's way more boards, way more sizes, a few more constructions, price points of course, and there's a lot more boards to look at. So where do we start? Well, let's talk about the range in general, and we're going to be touching on the Neil Pride foils they've got as well. So all these boards and their different sizes are there to offer different performance for different weights and abilities and different types of disciplines in those foiling. Starting off with the biggest board is the Slate Foil. Now a lot of you may be familiar with this, as in it is a surf slate SUP shape, but it has a foil box on the bottom. So that means you can SUP surf it, you can wing foil it, you can SUP foil it, you can windsurf foil it as well. You can do a lot with this board. It very much is a great board to get into the foiling side of the sport. There's a few different sizes in there. They offer a good amount of stability for a large range of riders. They're a lot longer than the other boards, which you'll speak about in a minute, but that board will give you way more glide and easy entry to getting into lots of different sides of the foiling disciplines. Definitely if you're into SUP surf foiling, you're going to find it easier to paddle in on that board than opposed to a much shorter foil board. But you can still use that board to get into winging and windsurf foiling, and you can of course surf it as a traditional SUP. The three sizes you get your 7.8 by 29, you get your 8.2 by 30 and your 8.10 by 31. The bigger board will offer you more stability at 31 wide, and the narrower boards will be a little bit quicker to paddle or pull up onto the foil because they've got less drag in the width, but they are shorter overall, so they'll be a little bit more technical to use. We've been playing around with the bigger 8.10 with the wing, and the really nice thing to note about that is it's a very slow and steady entry to get you up onto the foil. A lot of other smaller boards, they're a little bit more dramatic. They require you to a little bit more footwork or maybe a little bit more trimming to get your board up onto the foil, but that is much more of a gradual pickup. So you would generally feel the power in your wing and you'd load your foil up and slowly the board would come off the water, and then when it comes back down, because there's extra length to it, it just nicely touches back down and kicks you back up again to get onto the foil. So it is quite a nice entry having a longer base board. The downside to having a longer base board when you're foiling in the surf or with your wing or even windsurfing is you've got more board to move around in the air, and you've got more board sticking out the front that you're not actually using as soon as you're on your foil, and that's why all of the other boards are much shorter than the foil slate range. If you're looking for a board to just get into wing foiling, you can look at the whole range of JP Australia boards, but really you're probably going to be focusing on the XWinger. This is a brand new shape board for JP Australia this year. Lots of different sizes in this board. This is the only board that doesn't come with a UJ screw thread that you can screw at the front there, which would allow you to put your windsurf rig on. So they're saying this is just for wing foiling. You probably could SUP surf foil some of these boards, but they are getting a little bit shorter in general, so they're going to be much harder to paddle in. So these are really pushing towards winging only. Way shorter, way more compact. You can ride them in the traditional offset wing stance at the front here. You've got different options where you can offset the back strap. These boards are fairly short in their length, but they've still got a bit of width, so they are fairly stable. They have a nice concave deck, which is great for when you're jibing and tacking, forcing all of your effort and your body weight towards the center of the board, which is allowing you to get lower, closer to the foil, which is really important, and also allowing you to have any of your body weight or your body movements is sort of focusing more around the center of the board opposed to the outside of the board, which is not what you want when you are up on the foil. We've been playing around with a 5.5 by 28, which probably a lot of you are going to be looking at that size board in general. There's lots of other sizes, as you can see there. Biggest board is 6.5 by 31, all the way down to a smaller 4.5 foot by 26. But you'll notice that the width is there really with all these boards. They've kept the width throughout the whole of the boards, which makes them nice and stable. A lot of you looking to get into the sport will be looking at the board that we've used, which is a 5.5 by 28. That's going to be a really popular size for a lot of you. And those retail at around $1,199 for the IPR construction, which is the cheaper base construction over the Pro, which is the lighter base construction board. So that 5.5 that we've been using is 105 litres, so still enough volume in there. It's quite easy to float on, but you still get a nice compact feel when you're up and flying. So the smaller board's obviously going to drop in volume, but even the smallest board has still got 75 litres, so they are still sticking a fair amount of volume in those boards. So if the wind does drop, you can still bog home, obviously depending on what weight you are overall on top of that board. But for most boards, you're going to be able to get home with the JP Australia XWinger range. The bottom shape's pretty simple with this one. You've got a nice little bit of nose rocker there at the front there to give you over any chop or when you're bouncing back down to keep you up and not nose diving. You've got a fairly thick rail to it. You've got a small V in the center with some slight double concaves, very, very slight, not much going on. Pretty flat all the way to the back there. Again, very, very slight concave there either side of the V, and at the back of the board you've got a small cutaway so you can push down and initiate that tail a little bit more to help you generate and get yourself up onto the foil a little bit earlier. Fairly boxy rails, they're still slightly beveled, so if you do come down hard you won't nosedive and you'll be able to pop yourself back up onto the foil pretty easy. All the boards come with the same big double US box foil box at the back here, and the XWinger is fitted with a handle underneath, so it's easy to carry, but there is no handle on the top. Putting the XWinger to one side, let's bring the X Foil out. Now, another new board for 2021. This board does look fairly similar to the traditional JP Australia foil, which we had a few years ago, and it's still in the range, but it is a little bit different. The main difference is you can get these in much shorter, more compact lengths compared to their width. So the X Foil is a board that you could use for SUP surf foiling, you could use for wing foiling, and you could also even use it for windsurf foiling as well, because it is actually a UJ thread mount in the front there. Similar foot strap setup positionings to the XWinger board, except you have got the option of running it as a central strap. Offers you more ability to obviously take it out on the surf, giving you that more upright over the center line of the board. You've got a raised EVA pad here, which is a really nice feature that they had in the older foil boards, and that's great. So if you're riding strapless, especially if you're surfing, you can feel where you are on the board. Really nice kick pad again. Great thing to have if you're riding strapless, because you can ram your foot against it, and again it's a reference point when you're up on your board. So as I said, the shape of this is very similar to the traditional foil board that JP Australia have had in their range for a few years. That more compact nature makes it a little bit easier when you're up and riding. If you're surfing, you're going to find it easier to pump and generate speed, quicker turns. It's still got a little bit of length there compared to a lot of the XWingers, so it's going to show itself much better at paddling in on waves. If you're getting into SUP surf foiling, you're going to have more performance with this and catching waves earlier than you are with a board like the XWinger. So this is definitely crossing the gap over. Still got a very slightly concave deck, so it's bringing you lower down towards the foil. The bottom shape is virtually exactly the same as the XWinger. You've got a small double concave and a V in the center here. That goes all the way back, so the center is slightly raised up. Small concave either side. Flattens off a little bit towards the foil box, which is exactly the same size. But the back here, you've got the more traditional cutaway tail that we saw and we have still got in the original JP Australia foil board. Now this cutaway tail is really great, especially when you're trying to get up and pop up on the waves, because you can push down on that tail, sink that tail, initiate that foil and get yourself up and foiling much, much earlier. That really does help when it gets to getting up on a wave compared to a flatter tail board. So straight away, even if you had an XWinger and the X Foil in the similar sizes in the surf, this board will be able to get you up on the foil in the waves much, much easier. With winging, it changes a little bit. It still makes it a little bit easier if you're pumping hard, but that's a more compact board, and they have moved where they put the foil box itself, so it changes it a little bit. Really, surf is really where you feel the big difference to getting up early and that cutaway at the back here. The rocker line and the rail shape still very much the same as the XWinger. Big old beveled rails here, so when you do come back down, you don't nosedive, and with a smaller bit of nose kick there, nose rocker, it's going to bring you back up and it's still got a handle in the bottom just like the XWinger board does. So that board's available in a couple of different sizes. You've got your 6.8 by 28.5, you've got your 6.2 by 27.5, and your 5.8 by 26.5. So a little bit longer, but also a little bit wider compared to the traditional foil board. And talking about the JP Australia foil board, so that board's been in the range the longest. It's definitely a little bit longer and thinner than the other boards we're looking at in proportion. So you're going to be able to paddle on a wave much quicker. You're going to get more glide. They make a 6.8 by 26, a 7 foot by 28, and a 7.2 by 29. Those boards still have a place in the market, which we'll speak about in a minute, but really I feel that the new X Foil is going to be taking a lot of you away from that board. But really, what boards should you be looking at, and what disciplines are you going to really get the most out of each of those boards? Well, just to go over it again, the XWinger is definitely the winging based board. You can get into it as a new winger. It is not going to offer you as much forward glide or forward speed compared to the longer based boards, but when you're into the sport and up and foiling, the XWinger is going to offer you a good amount of performance. It's going to help you get your jibes, help you transition your feet around with a nice concave deck. The foot straps in a great position, so that is your winging base board if you just want to do winging. If you're wanting to cross over between a SUP foiling board and a wing foiling board, you've got two choices here. You can look at the newer X Foil, or you can look at the traditional foil. I would say if you are urging more towards the wing side but doing a little bit of surfing, probably look at the X Foil. But if you're looking at going more surf foiling than wing foiling, probably look at the foil board because you've got a little bit extra length but not too much width there, so it's going to be easier to catch the waves. I think in the future they will probably cancel out the foil board and they'll just have the XWinger board, but bear in mind the shorter board is going to be harder to catch waves on if you're trying to get into SUP foil surfing. And remember, you can windsurf foil on both of those boards as well. But if you want a board that really does a lot of stuff and you still want to go SUP surfing in the more traditional sense, then you're going to be looking at the foil Slate. A lot more length, a lot more stability. It's not going to have as much performance when you're up on the foil, but it's going to do everything. It's going to get you into all those disciplines, and then from there on you can then choose if you want a smaller wing board or if you're just going to go down the SUP foiling route. And just to give you a recap on what this board is like when you go SUP surfing with it, so without the foil, this is classed as what we say as a stubby nose base board. It's relatively short for the amount of stability you get for it. Works really well in the slightly mushier, choppier conditions, maybe the weaker waves. It's quite quick because it's parallel outline. You can run this as a thruster setup, which works really well, and the three different sizes will offer you a good amount of performance, again, in those slightly weaker, mushier waves, and they're fairly easy to ride, but they're not as fast to paddle in as those longer, more thinner based, more pro-shaped boards, let's say. Another board that we haven't spoken about at all is the inflatable, and unfortunately we haven't seen one of these boards yet, but on paper it looks like it could be a really good standout board. There's foot straps on that, there's a tail release runner on that. JP have been making really good stiff ice-ups with good constructions and materials on the rails, so we do think this board should be fairly stiff and offer you a good amount of performance. So remember, if you're looking for an inflatable board, JP do also make the Wing Air as well. The foil that a lot of you are going to be looking at, and the foil that we've been playing around on the last couple of weeks, is the Neil Pride Glide Surf. We've been using the 19, which is a fairly big size. It's got a front wing area of 1,850. There is a few other sizes. You can get a bigger 23, which is 2,270 square centimeters, and they offer smaller sizes right down to an 11, which is an 1,130 square centimeters. They're all fairly competitive price points of these. These are all Neil Pride's new HP sizes, so they're slightly more high performance or highest ratio, which to be honest is a little bit of a shame if you are a real beginner, because their slightly fatter foils will offer you a little bit more performance. But if you are moving away from that slight beginnerness and you're going to more the intermediate advanced riding, these foils really are going to offer you much more performance. Having said that, using this bigger foil still offers you a nice amount of controllability, so if you are getting into it and you are willing to go through a little bit of a learning curve, you can buy into these foils and you will be able to progress years and years with them, and you're definitely not going to get bored with the amount of performance they give you back. full carbon front wings, you've got an aluminium fuselage, you've got a full carbon tail wing, and you've got an aluminium mast as well. And also about the mast, Neil Pride have always made quite wide, deep mast, which give you a good amount of stiffness. And the way that the top box is fitted on, you've got your Torx drives that you can screw in, but because these are nice and long, the neat thing about this, you don't actually have to take these bolts off to take the foil off your board. You undo the nuts right out, and then you can slide them out the back of the track. It's just a little thing, again, which makes your life much, much easier than actually lining up the foil with the nut inside the foil board. The whole range is interchangeable, so you can get all the parts and upgrade the size of the front wing or the tail wing or the mast, the fuselage, so that's nice. So you can buy into this brand and you can upgrade foil front sizes, so you haven't got to buy different foils completely, you can just buy parts of the foils to get the best sort of performance in whatever conditions you're looking to get out. We like to have a bit more time with these foils and use some smaller sizes, but generally we're pretty impressed, and we think the price point for these is pretty good as well. So definitely, if you're an improver foiler, looking at the new Neil Pride Glide Surf HP range could be a good foil range that you should be looking at, and it works well with, of course, the JP Australia foil boards. So I hope that's given you a bit of information about the JP Australia foil boards and touching on the Neil Pride foils. So there's a lot of boards in that JP Australia range that really should be looked at for whatever discipline you're wanting to do. The standout boards for us definitely are going to be for your wingers. The XWinger, especially in the 5.5, is a great compact board but still offers you enough float if the wind dies and you want to get home. For you guys and girls who are wanting to get in multi-sport use, yes, the X foil is the new kid on the block. A little bit shorter, a little bit more compact than the traditional foil board. It's going to give you that bit more performance, especially when you get into really good flight times. And if you want to do it all and have an easy ride, to give foiling a go and seeing if it's right for you, but still have a board that surfs well in mushy sort of conditions, look at the traditional foil Slate range. We've always been pretty impressed with the JP construction and build quality of the boards, and they do seem to hit pretty good price points. But of course, if you've got any feedback about the JP Australia range in general with other boards, and especially these foil boards, please let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, if they've been working right for you, or if you've got any problems with the brand also. It's always great to hear your feedback. Please give this video a like if you found it useful, or a dislike if you didn't, but please remember to write why you disliked it and how we can improve it for the future, because we always want to make sure that you are riding the best kit for you out there. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on another SUPboarder video real soon.